Hi everybody. You can see me down in that little corner. My name is April Demito. I'm going to be your professor for the next 12 weeks as we start Women's Health and Therapeutics and Management. And I generally start my classes with an introduction, goes over what my expectations of are you for the next 12 weeks. So let's go ahead and get started. I want to show you a little bit of the canvas and what my view looks like so that you can see what I'm looking at here. So I'm going to be teaching, I'm the coordinator for the Women's Health section here at Olivet. I've got a strong background in women's health. I was in women's health for 18 years. For the last 7 years, I've been practicing as a family nurse practitioner with Advocate Medical Group in Illinois. And I've taught for Olivet about 5 years now, I believe it is. And I teach women's health a lot. So you can see now I'm going to be teaching two sections of women's health for the next 12 weeks. I'm just finishing up two sections. Monday is actually their last week. So your week starts tomorrow. So tomorrow is going to be week 1 for you guys. And I generally start on Sunday. Most Sundays, not every Sunday, most Sundays I post a video announcement to go over what the expectations are of for the week to come. I try to be very open and communicate a lot with students. That's why it's really important for you to check your email on a daily basis. You might miss something, and I think you'll find it really helpful. So I am actually going to use one of the sections of class that we're almost done with so that you can get an idea of how the class is set up. Oh, I've got to go back. Excuse me. So I'm going to be teaching 118 and 121. So they both start on Mondays. The week is going to be the same. The assignments will be due on the same. So I generally make one assignment and I submit it to both courses or both sections because it's essentially the same. So let's go into this one. 115, and this is an older version of the class, so it's set up a little differently. Your modules are set up in a different way, but the same material is covered. So your course syllabi is how you're going to start, and it gives you the information with the course outcomes and textbooks. You'll find some really good links here. ACOG is the American Academy of OB/GYN. This is the governing body over all obstetricians and gynecologists. So if you're looking for standards in practice, this is where you want to look. Other clinical practice guidelines and recommendations can be found on these other websites, and I think you'll find those of great benefit to you in your clinicals. Oop. I'm going to scroll down here. Then you have your grading, and that's the same as it is in every other class. The MSN handbook, and then different policies. So, and then this is what your version might not look like this. This is what mine looks like. So I'm going to go into the modules, and your modules are set up the same way. So whenever we are starting a new course, we start out with a introduction. So you need to have your introduction post placed by Wednesday. So that's going to be a requirement. And tell me a little bit about yourself. That introduction forum here, it's going to be due, it's always due day 3 of week 1 when you start a new course. So tell me a little bit about yourself and I'll tell you a little bit about me. And this week you have well, we'll start at the overview and objectives for week 1. So this tells you about the information. The first week goes into a lot of history where women's health is concerned, and then we have our objectives. I'm going to move my little box over here, and I'm going to move me and go to the next. Every week we have a devotion. So if you click on this Reflecting God link, it'll bring you to a wonderful site that has proverbs and different scripture that you might find helpful. You can also put your prayer requests in there as well. And next. Now we have content presentation. So your PowerPoint presentations will be here for week 1. You have several. You're going to see that over the next several days that I'm going to begin populating your course with some extra links because I have developed PowerPoint presentations that actually have audio on them. So it's almost like getting a lecture, and students have found it very helpful in the past. So you'll be seeing those pop up in the next several days. So for week 1, you're going to read these chapters, and you can click on this link, and it gives you got a good graph on life expectancy across the globe, and then here sex differences and pain. So if you have an opportunity to click on these links, you'll find them quite beneficial. Here's our class introduction forum. So make sure you post on there. There's my students that have already done this because this class is almost done. So let's go down to next. Now, women's health paper, and you'll see that this is draft 1. There are 2 areas for you to post papers as drafts. And what does that mean? Yeah, you can write your paper and you can put it through, and it'll do a plagiarism check through Turnitin. And this is very important that you do this because all papers are checked for authenticity and originality. I look through all of them. A paper that has a score higher than 25% is not passing. And that score is kind of a tricky score because you might say, oh, as long as I get that score to 25 or less, we're good. And that's not the case. I look at the paper to ensure that the paper has not been cut and paste off of different articles. So I'm looking for sentences and paragraphs that are indicative of plagiarism. So something you need to learn as a graduate student is the art of paraphrasing. So it's taking that writer's words and turning them into your own. And there's a caveat to this as well. Self-plagiarism. So you have been in the program for a while, you've written papers up to this point. Any paper that you've submitted through Turnitin is now part of that Turnitin network. So you can't cut and paste pieces of old papers and put them together to generate a paper because it will come up as plagiarized. And you can't say to me, that's my paper, that's why it says that it's plagiarized. That doesn't work that way. You have to adapt your paper so that it once again is reworded. And it can be quite challenging sometimes, but it is an important part of the process. Writing papers at a graduate level as a nurse practitioner is a skill that's important to learn. So let's talk a little bit about Paper One. What is Paper One? Well, with Paper One, you're going to use the National Women's Law Center Health Card Report Card and give me a good description of the general demographics of the population of women in your state. And I'm going to give you an example paper so that you know what I mean, because I have high expectations of master's prepared nurses when I'm grading these papers. They need to be in good APA format. I expect that you'll have headings to introduce your topics in a paper, and I expect each paper to be written at a high level. So you need to know what I expect. So you're going to be seeing another video come up in the next couple of days that will go over my expectations from that point. So, but for purposes of today, we're going to go over the course content so that you have an idea of the expectations of the next 12 weeks. So here we go for next. And this is the second area. I think what's important too for you to remember is that when you submit your final draft, it needs to be placed here. You can't submit your final draft in those other two links because I won't recognize it as having been submitted. Another good way to ensure that you're getting good content in your paper is to follow the rubric. Rubrics are finely described pieces of paper that tell you exactly what we expect. So, or actually components of your paper, excuse me. So you can see here the content is worth 15 points, and these descriptors tell me whether or not your paper is exceptional, good, poor, or substandard. And at this level, um, I wouldn't expect anybody to submit a paper that was less than good or exceptional. So follow the rubric. It's really going to be helpful to you as a guide. Also, be on the lookout for that um, video that I'm going to post on it also. You're going to see too, as I said earlier, this is one of the chapters that I've written on. So this is chapter 1 review, and we click on this little voice box here and you'll hear my summary of the content. And I want to go back here to the modules because we're going to go over a lot of PowerPoints that I don't want to go over right now. See, I've got them all listed here, all the chapters. And week 2, let's look at week 2. So for week 2, you have PowerPoints, and then you have a complete pregnancy examination YouTube video here, which is a good resource for you. So take a minute to look at that. And next, your readings, and click on those links. You'll get some great information using those links. Now, this is where we're going to start the case study discussions. Case study discussion starts week 2. And I do my case study discussions a little different than the other classes. I've done it both ways. I've put people in teams and I haven't put people in teams, and I find that it works a little bit better when I don't put the students in teams. So that's what we're going to do this over the next 12 weeks. How are we going to do it then? Well, you open this up, pregnant daughter didn't want this, and read the information here. So this tells a story about a woman who ended up in an accident that caused brain death while she was pregnant. And then I want you, each individual, to answer the questions at the end of the article. And then you'll post those in your discussion post. So each participant of this course is going to read the paper, answer the questions, and then post. That's when you start discussing the content of the paper with each other. So if you look at the MSN handbook and you see what the requirements are for a case study discussion, that the minimum requirement is a total of 3 posts. The first post being the one that you submit with your answers to the questions that have been at the end of the article. The second post is going to be your feedback to someone who has written the same thing that you've done. So you're going to start a conversation with one of your classmates on the content that they put in there. And then the third one is going to be your response to someone who has commented to one of your posts. So that's 3. Now this graded discussion is worth 25 points. In order to get the full points, you need to go above the minimum requirement. So you really have to interact with your classmates. You're going to need to comment on more than one post if you want to get full credit. Otherwise, points will be deducted. Additionally, your posts need to be substantive. They need to be cited and written in APA format. And I don't go crazy about counting words and all of that stuff, but they do need to be high caliber posts. It's not acceptable for you to write, Cynthia, I agree with you completely, great post. That's not good enough. You've got to really interact. Okay? So then I'm going to hurriedly go down here so that I can get to next. My computer doesn't want to move fast enough. And I read everything. So I read all of the posts, and you'll see that I have comments, and something that it's a good point or for you to remember is if I ask you a question, you need to answer it. If you don't, you're going to see that you don't have a point value there because I'm not going to give you points until you answer the question that I have asked you. Now, next is a SOAP note. So you will be doing SOAP notes, several of them throughout the next 12 weeks. They're going to be due on Friday, and I'll show you when the due dates of everything is coming up. Now, SOAP notes are comprehensive in this course, and they are complete, comprehensive SOAP notes, and I expect them to be, starting with your CC, your HPI, and I'm going to actually have a presentation on SOAP notes for you too. SOAP notes are incredibly important. Not only do they ensure that you're providing adequate documentation, but you're also justifying your diagnosis, and you are also justifying your billing, because you cannot undercode or overcode charts. So I'll show you how to write an appropriate SOAP note. And there's a rubric that will help you also. So that rubric you'll find really helpful. And you'll see, after the first few weeks, you'll know what I'm expecting from you, and you will make changes to your SOAP notes in accordance to um, what my expectations are. And you'll see that. I'm very open. Again, you'll see that there will be a link, questions for the instructor. Don't use this. If you need to get in touch with me, send me an email or text me. There are too many steps to get to questions for the instructor. So if you email me or text me, I'll get back to you soon. If you don't get a response from me within a few hours, I didn't get your message and you need to resend it, because I'm really prompt about returning calls. Don't call me though. I won't answer the phone. Text or email. I do a lot of my grading, and I take every minute and I work. So if I'm in the clinic seeing patients, in between patients, I'm looking at your posts. I'm making little videos like this. So um, I'm pretty keep up on that stuff. So week 2, your case study discussion and your SOAP note. Week 3, the same thing, case study and SOAP. Week 4, case study and SOAP. Week 5 is a little different. You've got a case study discussion and a paper due and a SOAP note. Now, the case study discussion for week 5 is a little different. Case study discussion for week 5 is that I want each person in the class to talk about a topic that is current today for women's health, and be creative and individual. I've had people put everything from Zika virus and on it, and I'll post some examples too. The thing with this week 5 case study discussion is I don't want 16 Zika virus discussions. So um, you need to kind of claim your topic before anybody else does. I understand there might be an overlap here and there, but 16 Zika viruses aren't very interesting to read about. And it worked out really great the last class. So paper 2 is going to be due here also. And I think that week 5 is going to be the toughest week for you because you've got your paper due and then you're getting prepped for your exam. So midterm exam is week 6. And then week 7, things change a little bit. So week 7, you're still going to have your readings and all of that, but we begin to have clinical round discussions. And I really like clinical round discussions. I think that you guys find it really helpful. With clinical round discussions, you're going to take a patient that you have had in your clinical rotation, and you're going to write about something that was going on with that patient. And now with clinical round discussions, you have to be creative. So I want you to find interesting things that you're going to discuss. And again, I'll show you an example. And you see there's a SOAP note due too. So I advise students to use the same patient. You're like killing two birds with one stone if you use the same patient for your SOAP note. And most students will start their clinical round discussion by using their SOAP note and then identifying something that they are then going to elaborate on, like HPV or um, intimate partner violence or gestational diabetes. So something that has been going on with that patient. And then you'll elaborate on that. Now, week 9 is going to be your last SOAP note, and week 10 is your last clinical round discussion. Week 11 is going to be the third piece of your paper. Now, I say piece of your paper because essentially this is one big paper that's broken out into 3 pieces. So, paper 1 goes deeply into the demographics of the population. And then paper 2 talks about a problem that's going on in that demographic, a health problem in women's health. And then paper 3 is geared more towards a solution or some solutions that can be. So try to think of that paper 1, 2, and 3 as one big paper that's written in 3 pieces. And then on week 12, you have your final exam. So I know that this is a lot of information to take in, so we're going to do it in pieces. So right now, I've given you an overview of the course content. Over the next few days, you're going to be getting a lot of resources from me, and it's important you check your email and announcements daily. There might not be anything, but then again, there might be something, and I don't want you to miss it. I will have all of your assignments put out on this calendar. That's how I do things. So I don't have it complete yet, so I'll be working on that in the next couple of days. But you can see how my other section, I tell you when things are due. So it'll be right here. But for purposes, so that you can at least have an idea before I get it all done, tomorrow is day 1 of week 1 of the course. Your introduction is going to be due on Wednesday, the 8th. That's day 3. Your SOAP notes are always going to be due on Friday. Okay, but you don't have a SOAP note due this week, so don't worry about it. You have a paper due. So paper 1 is going to be due on the 14th. Oops, I'm sorry. Paper 1 is going to be due on the 12th. I always have the paper due the day before the start of the next week. So your paper is going to be due the 12th. And I'll write this all out for you. It'll be on the calendar. So starting on week 2, the 13th, your discussion posts will always be due on Wednesday. Your SOAP notes will always be due on Friday. Your responses on the discussion group will always be due on Sunday. So that's never going to vary throughout the whole course. Those are going to be my expectations. So I'm typically on Sunday grading all of the discussion posts to ensure that you have enough, that they're substantive. I'm looking at them throughout the week, but you won't get a final grade on them until at least Sunday or maybe a couple of days out if I'm got a lot of stuff on my plate. So we're going to end it here, and at least I hope that this has been some help to you. I know the beginning of the class is always a bit of a challenge, a new professor, new expectations, but I like to keep things open, so and I communicate a lot. So I look forward to working with you over the next 12 weeks. Good night.